What is going on, guys? Pokemon here. We are back with another Pokemon TCG Pocket video. Here on the Pokemon channel, you already know what it's about. I got one hand in my Pokemon TCG Pocket, and the other
is committing political assassination to make you forget Epstein exists.
We are currently about halfway through the Secluded Springs format. So I decided I want to make a video talking about the current state of the game and what is to come in the future with potential new sets. We obviously have a ton to talk about, and with the Mega Evolution mechanic just on the horizon, it probably is coming out next month, we have to assess where we currently are and where that might take us. So that said, let's just get right into the video. Importantly, I think it's good to start with the current health of the format. Secluded Springs actually isn't a terrible place to be. A major dilemma all games face over time is power creep. Power creep is essentially when a game spans over a period of time, the original set or product becomes less and less playable in a competitive sense as each new set introduces stronger, more powerful options that completely eclipse or make previous options irrelevant. Power creep doesn't even necessarily have to change the whole format. One of the most notable forms of power creep is when a card from a previous set actually just gets eclipsed entirely if it's use case, and it feels like a net negative to play. For example, let's take the Greninja card. If I were to add a Samurott card into the game, made the same stats, made it's also a stage 2 non-EX, but I gave its ability the chance to do 30 chip damage, choosing to play Greninja feels just bad because you have the option for better and you literally have no reason to play the Greninja over the Samurott. You just don't. But I think you could tell from just me having to create an imaginary example, there isn't much cases of that in Pokemon TCG Pocket. Even Pokemon that play very similar to each other, they've done a really good job of either making slight changes to the cost, the energy, maybe it's a stage 1 and not a stage 2, maybe it's just a slight damage change, but they've made these tiny little changes to make sure that each Pokemon still makes sense if its hypothetical role came up. This has some really cool positives. Yes, it is obvious that since base set format, Mewtwo has not been the dominant force that it was in the meta. You'd think after a couple sets in other games, we might have just gotten a better Psychic basic Pokemon that does 150 damage maybe easier or with the same energy, and says just some slight advantage that makes Mewtwo fall into obscurity. But there's really nothing that does exactly what Mewtwo does. So in the future, if they create a support card that makes Mewtwo's niche become a little bit more accessible or relevant, players are going to turn back to Mewtwo EX and not some other card that has just eclipsed it in power level completely. So like I demonstrated, there's some cool positives to Pokemon TCG Pocket and how they handle power creep. On the other side of that coin, there are some negative outliers that really do stand out, but let me show you a list of top decks from the current format. One of the most popular decks currently are different variations of a water setup, including Suicune EX, which on the surface you think that's pretty cool because it is a new card. It doesn't really have anything that looks completely broken, but in general, players wanting to use cards from the newest set is a good thing, even if they don't completely destroy everything else before them. So that seems pretty great and positive on the surface, right? Well, then you go ahead and look at some of the deck lists, like this one, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. And you might start noticing, a couple cards in common among these decks that aren't Suicune. Maybe it's a blue aforementioned frog from Kalos. I mean, I can't get around it, right? People play Greninja. Greninja's a disgusting card. And this is what I mean by the other side of power creep, right? It is great that a card from, Mythical Island is still so playable and has been really since its release. It's unfortunate the card in question happens to just play a really kind of annoying toxic playstyle. Its ability, Water Shuriken, has kept it relevant for this long, but it has never felt good to use or play against. And although not as old as Greninja, Giratina is another prime example of this situation. Basically, since its release, Giratina splashed into almost anything, and Giratina Darkrai specifically, as in a chip deck, have been extremely meta-relevant the entire time. Don't get me wrong, I actually really do like Giratina EX design. It also really makes sense that they're pairing this with things like Suicune, right? Because you're gonna put Suicune in your active, Suicune's gonna draw every single turn, and you still get to use your broken space below. Maybe it wouldn't be as annoying and noticeable if the second most popular decks also weren't just Giratina variant. And unfortunately, majority of the ones in question are Giratina Darkrai, which maybe it's an unpopular opinion. I think I could say anyone who's played this game for the last 6 months probably is pretty tired of seeing Darkrai and Giratina splashed into every single format. And this conversation on power creep kind of just rounds me out to my next point of just the overall health of the current format. We have cool, interesting decks, don't get me wrong. The fact that the Flareon EX deck and the Sylveon EX with Espeon EX is so playable is great. Those decks are genuinely so fun. They feel good to play against. They feel good to play. They don't feel overpowering in any way. Every time I sit down with one of those decks or against one of those decks, I genuinely feel like I'm playing the game. What doesn't feel like the game intends you to do, chip with Darkrai, chip with Greninja, sit on the bench with Giratina, Cyrus your opponent out of the game. It is not a healthy style of gameplay. It just isn't. I don't feel like I need to really defend that statement. I just don't think those are cards that should stick around. I don't know how they remedy the situation, but I wouldn't be opposed to them doing something unprecedented just to get rid of those cards. Yes, I know, yap. Format bad, Greninja bad, Pokemon, we get it, you don't like the format. The reason why this is important is because of the knowledge we have going into the next format. Remember those Mega Pokemon that were just teased about a couple months back? Those Mega Pokemon all have a very interesting rule attached to them, which is they give up 3 points when KO'd by your opponent. Or you, I guess, if you're jamming Magcargo. Knowing that your opponent can just win the game on the spot at any point in time, I don't think chip damage is going anywhere currently in the meta. Well, besides higher up on the chart that it's already #1 in play usage. If you think do nothing, sit on Suicune and Giratina, use Greninja to chip damage your opponent, and then Cyrus them out the game is good now, which is the most popular deck, just wait till your opponent knows that they can win the game on the spot with 1 kill. I think this will genuinely really hurt the playability of Mega Pokemon, but more so than that, I think it's just going to increase the playability of chip damage to an astronomical amount. If that is correct, though, hopefully more people will see it, and maybe Jirachi will grant a wish here, and we'll get those cards removed somehow. But I don't see that happening. I'm going to wrap it up here for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Greninja and Darkrai and such. Or if there's any other cards you think that are extremely toxic and have stood the test of time of being toxic. Or if you think I'm completely wrong, please let me know in the comments. Be sure to tune in for another Pokemon TCG Pocket video super soon. And this has been Pokimoki, we're out. Alone at the end of the universe, looking for you. We're merely dealing in the snow. The loud dread sounds can be heard from home eating chicken with rice. And maybe Team Rocket was right. We're blasting off tonight.